Rhavynn Drummer, and life is a journey, not a destination. Enjoy the 401 session. Thank you all for having me. I'm so excited to be here and back on a college campus. My name is Rhavynn Drummer, and I'm an independent casting director, and I work with Tyler Perry Studios. I've been there for the past 5.5 years. I feel like my story is going to be different than Tabari's and DJ Mars, and that's mainly because hearing like life is a journey, not a destination. I feel like I'm so still on that journey and probably closer to where you guys are. I'm 26 years old. I graduated college in 2007. But I'll go through my whole story, I guess. I'm from the New York, New Jersey area. My family's from New Jersey, but I went to high school in New York. I went to a big high school with a great drama theater program. So in high school, I was the girl who always got good grades. I was convinced I was going to be a doctor. That was my goal. I'm going to be an obstetrician gynecologist. I knew I wanted to go to Johns Hopkins University. I went to every single summer program about pre-med stuff, everything. But around 9th grade, I got bit with the theater bug and just started acting, started taking classes and things like that. Was in the drama program, did every single play that I could. It got to the point where my mother felt that my grades were being affected, so she's like, no, you can't audition for anything. So I would sneak and audition for things on the side and then be like, yeah, I guess I'm going to play next week, you should come out and see it. But throughout my whole high school experience, I didn't think that you could actually make a career of being in the entertainment industry. I just thought that was like, a hobby. My goal was still, you're going to become a doctor and then maybe act on the side if you want to. So I went to college. I went to the University of Virginia, in Charlottesville, Virginia, yes, with the goal of being pre-med, and becoming a doctor. So my classes, my first semester was chemistry and biology and a core cat class, and I took one acting class. And I realized in college that, I love my acting classes, and in chemistry I failed. I failed chemistry 101 and 102 miserably, and this is coming from a student who was used to getting straight A's in high school and got to college and was completely failing. So I decided after my first year in college that, being a doctor was probably not for me, because I'm sure I couldn't get into medical school with D's, in chemistry. So I decided to focus on theater. So my major became a theater major, and I double majored in also American Studies, which is a really complicated thing. Looking back on it, people are like, well, what kind of career can you have with a theater and American Studies major? But blessed be to God, I'm able to actually use my major. But I was a theater major. I auditioned for everything I possibly could in college. I went to a predominantly white institution, so we had 8% black people there. So in terms of being an actress, everything that I had to act for or act with was all stuff that I felt like I was playing. I was a black girl playing a white girl role in everything that I did. And I felt there were no roles that really reflected my story. So in my junior year, I created the Paul Robeson Players, which is basically an African-American theater organization on campus that focused on black people and black people's stories and things like that. It was a great experience for me because not only did I get to do works, with August Wilson and Lorraine Hansberry, but it also kind of just gave me experience of what it was to be a leader, what it was to manage, what it was to, I had to do everything myself in terms of, writing the mission and the vision and everything for the organization, holding auditions for the organization, directing plays and things like that. And it was just a great learning life experience for me. I always, now I can see and, I try to think, how can you leave a legacy wherever you go? And I realized that that was the legacy I left at University of Virginia, because after I left, the organization continues to still thrive, and it started in 2005 or whatever it was. So I had a wonderful time at UVA, great learning experience, theater major in a school of nothing but business and pre-med students. And it was spring of 2007, and I was a senior, second semester in April, graduating in May, and people would be like, so what are you doing when you graduate? And I had no idea. I had no idea what my plan was a month before graduation. So I met, my mother let me know that, one of our old friends from my church worked at Tyler Perry Studios. And she was working as an assistant to one of the producers at the time. And she's like, you should just get in contact with her, call her up. And so, I called her, and she's like, just keep in contact with me. I asked her if there was anything that, that I could do. She's like, we have an internship program. Why don't you go ahead and apply? So I applied for the internship program. 2 weeks before graduation, I found out that I actually got the internship program. I got the job as an intern and was preparing to move to Atlanta. So 2 weeks after I graduated, I just picked everything up, moved to Atlanta. I knew no one here in the city. And I just started interning in June of 2007 at Tyler Perry Studios. It was an unpaid internship. I was 21 years old, and I was absolutely miserable. I hated every second of it. And it was only because I was in a city with people that I had no idea who they were. And I was kind of like feeling like, okay, I'm going to graduate college and I'm just going to make it. Like I'm already going to be in that position I want to be in, be able to take care of myself. And I realized I wasn't able to pay any of my bills. I was graduated from the University of Virginia, which is a really, really hard school. And here I am, like my number one concern was getting lunch for the producers or making labels and things like that. And it felt like I was doing all these things that were beneath me. I have a college education. Like, why am I getting coffee? And so I interned unpaid for like 4 months. Now that I think about it, I don't know how I made that work, but I interned for 4 months, and I literally was in worked in almost every single department at Tyler Perry Studios. So I was an intern to producer. I worked a few days in costumes. I was a set PA some days. I was an office PA. I worked in accounting. And for me, it wasn't on purpose. They just needed somebody to help out over there. So I helped out over here, and they needed somebody this day, and I helped out over there. But I realized that it really gave me insight into all the different departments of the film industry. And so one day someone asked me, like, well, what do you want to do? My focus had always been acting, but I didn't feel like I wanted to make a career out of being an actor. And so I was like, I'm kind of interested in producing and maybe in casting. So I started interning in casting one day, and it, just little things, just, helping with auditions and things like that. While I was interning in casting, I was also interning under one of the producers, Rhavynn at the time. So I kind of did both of that at the same time. So like Mondays and Fridays, I would intern in casting, and like Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I would intern with Mr. Cannon. And I did that for a year, or it eventually became a paid position, but I worked that schedule for a year. And it's interesting for me. It's like now you look back and you see what a blessing those times were. Some of my responsibilities, like as an intern to Mr. Cannon, would just be like little things like getting tea, like typing up letters and things like that. And I'll never forget, we would be doing a movie. We were doing The Family That Prays, and then we would write into Medea Goes to Jail. And Mr. Cannon would want someone to drive him to set every single day. And I was like, well, can't he drive? He has this gorgeous BMW. Like, why am I driving him to set? And you know, the set call was 6 a.m., which means that I would have to get up at 4 a.m., get to his house in Buckhead by 5 a.m., and then to get him to set by 6 a.m. And I did that every single day, and I would hate it because I would be so upset that I had to pick up at 4. You know, he'd be in my little Ford Contour with the window broken. Like I'm like, don't you want to just drive your own car? But I realized during that time that we just began to talk, you know, and he would just, you know, something would come up on the radio or the college basketball game would be on, and literally we just began to have conversations every day in between me, you know, taking him to set and then, you know, taking him back home. And I realized now how invaluable that was for me to be 22 years old, being able to have a conversation with someone who's a legend in my eyes. So I feel like through that I learned a lot of things. I learned a lot of how he works, how he operates, you know, how he works as a producer, how things work in the industry, you know, as a producer. And also Mr. Cannon had a tremendous career as a casting director as well. The good balance was, you know, when I would kind of work as an intern, I also got to see, one, how Alpha Tyler at the time worked as a casting director, and then two, how Mr. Cannon worked as a producer. So how she would make her decisions and then how Mr. Cannon would make his decisions, kind of combined both of them. Eventually I ended up being full-time casting assistant in 2008, and only, you know, my main job was casting. It's weird because I was also PA with Tabari during that big Faith to Fruition event. But I worked as a casting assistant for 4 years. And through that, you know, you get to learn a lot of things. I'm a person who, being that I was an actor, loves actors, loves great performances. I would go see any play, any television show. And the one thing that was good is Alpha Tyler at the time, she let me sit in on most of her casting sessions. I was the one behind the camera, you know, putting people on tape. I got to learn a lot about actors. I got to learn a lot about what it takes to have a good performance, what it takes for someone to actually book a role. Mr. Cannon always says you book actors that are better than the role. You know, so I learned a lot in that process, was there for 4 years. And then it got to a point where I realized that I had to start thinking differently. I had to start thinking as a casting director, even though I was the casting assistant. Because, you know, for me, I knew that my goal was not to remain a casting assistant. So as a casting assistant, I just tried to, you know, change my frame of thinking, you know, think ahead. You know, we work really fast at Tyler Perry Studios. If we have 3 episodes or, you know, a week, then that's 3 sets of actors that have to work a week. You know, trying to anticipate roles, what we'll need for the upcoming week. Trying to scout talent. Like I said, as a casting assistant, I went to every church play, every school play, you know, looking for talent, looking for someone to bring to the table, looking at performances and auditions, saying what I liked and what I didn't like, what worked and what didn't work. In June of 2011, my boss at the time ended up moving to another studio, so they ended up promoting me to casting director. And I've been working as a casting director for the past year and a half. And it's been a fantastic, wonderful blessing. You know, I've been able to audition and meet so many people. A lot of people in this room I've auditioned and whatnot. But it's been a blessing and a learning experience, not only in terms of you know, what the demands of a casting director are in terms of finding talent, in terms of saying, okay, am I confident enough to bring this person's audition in front of a producer, but also just as a leader, having to manage an office now, you know, having to make decisions, realizing that I don't have the luxury of time in a lot of the decisions that I make. And so I still feel like, you know, I'm on that journey. Like, my end goal is to be a producer, you know, to do things that Tabari is doing, you know, with Blue Lion Club. But being a casting director has opened my eyes. I was reading, they had like the 25 most influential casting directors. And I was reading, because someone said casting is is a really good balance between producing and directing. It is casting director, so when I'm in a room with an actor, it's my responsibility to try to pull out the best performance from them in that room. Now they have to bring something to the table too, but I have to try to get the best performance. If I can get the best performance, then I have something to give, to the producers. And then in a sense, you have elements of producing in there as well, because one, you have to decide, okay, who am I going to bring to a producer? You have to negotiate deals. You have to always deal with budgets and things like that, from an actor's standpoint. So it's a good balance of very technical, administrative things, and along with very creative things. So that's what I do. I will say, in terms of my, my motivation things and things that I used to inspire me, I realized when I was in 2003, as a freshman in college, I had just seen Diary of a Mad Black Woman, and I wrote down in my diary, I'm going to work at Tyler Perry Studios. I wrote that down, and I completely forgot about it. Didn't think about it. And then when I got to Atlanta, I realized that 4 years later, I was working at Tyler Perry Studios. So, that scripture, write down, make it happen. You never know. I've literally written it down and didn't think about it again. But, definitely, keep on pursuing those dreams that you guys have. One of the models I have on my wall is, between the promise and the payoff is the process. And I feel like I'm in the midst of that process, and I know that you guys are as well, and are just beginning. So yeah, that's my spiel for right now. Any questions?
Hello, I'm Denisha Jackson. And it seems like, sorry, my voice is kind of dry.
It's okay.
But it seems like starting off in the film industry, production assistant is a common area for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that a production assistant is a very challenging job because there's the answers to every question on set.
Mm-hmm.
So what advice would you give to a PA, I guess, to be able to be the best PA when they get on set?
Ooh, that's a good question.
To master that skill.
You know what? I was a set PA for a day and a half because I hated it. And it wasn't for me. I was at the set PA on Meet the Browns, the movie. It was 103 degrees outside, and I had no idea what even, they were like, just stand here with the walkie, and I was terrible. At it. So in terms of my advice, I knew that being a set PA was not for me. It just wasn't. And that wasn't, for me, that wasn't my way in. I was not able to be a good and effective set PA because that just wasn't it's just not something I'm meant to do, I feel like, at all. For me, it may have been finding a different way or finding another, path to be a PA, whether it be a wardrobe PA or a casting PA or an office PA. In terms of, I'd say, keys to being the best PA possible, one person will always say to me, as an assistant, you're always going to be wrong. No matter what you do, they're always going to blame you, and you're always going to be wrong. But, do your best. I always say, try to think ahead. Try to think of things to do, before someone asks. In college, I was an intern with Wendy Williams when she had her radio show. And for me, we treated it was like 4 of us were interns, and we treated it almost like a competition. Because that's the environment that she said. It was always like, okay, well, whoever got the best story, we would always have to get newspaper clippings, on our way to work, cut them out, give it to whoever, happened to watch Regis and Kelly that morning, and got a video clip of it. It's always those people who thought ahead, and presented something to her that she remembered. So I feel the same thing as a PA. Try to think ahead. Try to think of, or try to do something before someone asks you to do it. It's a way of, showing initiative and getting people to remember you. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Sierra Hodges. I'm actually a recent graduate. I have a 2-part question.
Yeah.
First is advice. I was also a theater major, but I am interested in, exploring TV and film. I've done a little bit of behind the scenes work on, sitcoms and things like that, and it intrigued me. So first question, what advice would you give as far as, someone who's trying to not necessarily leave theater the wayside, but transition into TV and film?
Leave theater acting, you mean, or leave theater Like, are you turning your attention to theater and television, film acting, or just, oh, okay. Don't leave theater. The only thing is, I love theater, and as an actor, you know, some of the best actors have such a strong foundation in theater. So I think my thing is, don't leave it behind. You know, it's always, you know, the true test of an actor is if they can do theater. You know, use theater to strengthen you in terms of if you want to make that transition into television and film. Know that it's different acting in theater versus in television and film. Notice that the same techniques that you use as a theater actor, they don't translate into television and film acting. So one, I would say, maybe take a film and television acting class so you know what it's like to be in front of the camera where you have to hit a mark, where a lot of it is, you know, a lot of your decisions as an actor are going to be much more intimate than if you're on stage and you have to perform for hundreds of people. And then in terms of like technical things, it's always going to be easiest if you can find an agent in terms of the television and film market, but that's not necessarily the route you have to go. You know, there are websites like 800 Casting and Breakdown Services, Actors Access, where you can create a profile, find out about different television and film auditions, you know, in the area, you know, and audition for that way. You know, I would do a bunch of short films. As an actor, if there are any actors in here, there is no reason why you should not have a reel and it should not be on YouTube. Like in this, if it's 2012, you need to have a reel and it needs to be on somebody's social media site or Facebook or something, because that's the way of the future. A lot of times, you know, even in terms of producers, I'll say, hey, I think this guy is great. And they're like, well, do you have anything for him? And so it helps if I can't send them a YouTube clip, a YouTube video. I've had actors that we've hired from a reel, you know? So those are all things that can be beneficial in terms of if you are looking to transition into television and film, but don't leave the theater behind. Keep those. Yeah.
I have a problem with decision making.
Okay.
So I'm just wondering if you just give me some words of wisdom about that. I don't necessarily think there's a right or wrong decision, but when deciding things like, you know, places of employment that are still going to allow me to do last minute auditions, you know, things like that. Or, you know, whether to stay or move or go to grad school or not, you know, things like that. Like, what advice could you give for that? Because sometimes I just really don't know what to do.
My advice would be like to cast your nets, shall I say. Keep striking. Because the thing is, you know, in terms of decision making, you may not know, okay, well, do I go, you know, for instance, like, do I go the school route? Do I go to school? Do I try to get an MFA in acting? Or do I start acting right now and, you know, just try to get jobs? You know, I guess my advice would be to, you know, to do it all, you know, in terms of try it out. If it doesn't work, you learned something, you know. My pastor, I don't know if you're spiritual, but, you know, if it's not God ordained, it's God used, you know. So there's always something to learn in any decision that, you know, that you decide to essentially make. So if it is like a grad school question, you can always apply. If you don't get in, you don't get in. You know that's not for you. If it's a job where you're trying to figure out if you should take this job, but it may interfere with your acting, you know, with your acting ability, you know, weigh the pros and cons. In that type of situation, you know, Sandra Bullock came to my school. She said her goal was to be a bartender and acting side. Like that's all she wanted. I always tell actors, like, you need to know what is your definition of success as an actor. Some people, they want to make a living out of being an actor and that's it. Some people want to be huge stars. Some people just want to be able to act, you know, in a play, in a short film, you know, something on the side, and that's completely fine. You know, so all those factors are going to affect your decisions.
All right, let's give it up.